the human brain versus the dog brain by Patty Chen. First, let's talk about dogs have three main parts of the brain plus the spinal cord. First, I'm going to talk about the brain stem connected to the spinal cord and the cerebellum. Second, we have the cerebrum. This is the bulk of the brain. There is some mesh holding it together, but it is divided into two sections. Third, we have the cerebrum, and this is in the back of the brain. Lastly, we have the spinal cord. This controls the muscular activity and reflexes. For example, moving a paw, wagging the tail, blinking when it needs to scratch. Now, let's move on to what we are, human. We also have some different parts of the brain. First, we have the cerebrum. It's divided into 4 lobes listed here. Second, we have the cerebellum, which we also see in the dogs. This is considered the little brain. Next, we have the limbic system. This controls our emotions and the emotional part of the brain. Next, we have the brain stem. This controls our breathing, our heartbeat, and so much more. Now, you might be wondering, what are some of the similarities? For one, our structure and the parts of our brain, as you can see, are pretty similar. We also process speech the same. And an interesting similarity is that dogs interact with humans the way babies do. So in reality, dogs are our children. Now for some of the dog's mental quirks. Dogs see humans as their family. And an interesting fact is that dogs are physically wired in their brain to pick up on mood changes. So dogs really do know if you're feeling sad. Now onto the mental quirks of humans. As a species, we are familiar with the concept of death, and we know in our minds that one day we are going to die. Dogs, however, are not, and they don't know that one day they're going to die. Ask yourself, well, there are so many more questions that need to be answered. There needs to be so much. But what we do know right now is that humans and dogs share a special. They've been domesticated to be our pets, to be welcomed into our home. They are our companions. We even consider them friends. I know I have dogs and I consider them my sisters, and they guard us. They know that they have to protect us. If they see a stranger and an unknown object, they will stand up for their owners, even if it means endangering themselves. We may not know everything, but what we do know is that dogs are a man's best friend. Functions of a dog's brain. First, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the cerebellum. The cerebellum is controlling of your dog's posture and movement. Next is the brain stem. This part of the brain in your dog is responsible for regulating a lot of the bodily functions. For example, the heartbeat or sneezing or something along that sort of line. Now for the other parts of your dog brain, it's basically very similar to a human brain. It has the 4 lobes with the same exact functions, and this is just for the sensories, so like hearing and seeing and smelling, but Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the human brain, but everything that kind of applies to the human brain also applies to the dog brain. For the 4 lobes, the dogs and humans both have these 4 lobes. The frontal lobe is for reasoning, planning, parts of speech, movement, emotions, and problem solving. So to go more in depth of this, the reasoning is if you're presented with a situation where logic needs to be involved, like should you do this, should you do that? This is kind of the area of the brain. So we have the parietal lobe. This is kind of for movement, recognition. The next lobe that I'm going to be talking about is the occipital. This is mostly for visual processing. So things that we see are kind of processed in the occipital lobe. And lastly, we have the temporal lobe. It's kind of memory and speech, and that is what is controlled in that part of the lobe. And that is kind of the functions of the human and dog brain in a wide view in very little time. Puppies and humans, are we really that different?